protesters have taken to the streets in Iran. The demonstrations are focused on the economy, with some Iranians shouting, "Death to the dictator."
The Iranian rial is now trading at around 1,429,500 to the US dollar. That's a 56% drop in just 6 months. Against the euro, it's even worse, 1,668,500 rials per euro.
Let me ask you something. What does it mean when a government is shooting its own people? Its soldiers are refusing orders. Its currency is collapsing. And at the same time, 2 American aircraft carriers are sailing toward its coastline? That's not a headline, that's a turning point. And right now, that turning point is forming over Iran. A second U.S. aircraft carrier is being prepared for deployment to the Middle East. President Donald Trump has moved up his meeting with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Negotiations with Iran are hanging by a thread. And everybody knows, if the U.S. and Iran clash, Israel is not sitting this one out. This is not a normal week in global politics. This feels different. And then, boom, into this already tense moment walks Reza Pahlavi, the exiled son of Iran's last Shah. He didn't whisper. He didn't hint. He didn't play polite politics. He called Iran's supreme leader a frightened rat hiding underground. That's not diplomacy. That's a direct challenge. He said the Islamic Republic has reached its end. He told Iran's military, police, and state officials to abandon the regime before it collapses on top of them. Pause there for a second, because that's not just rhetoric. That's a message designed for generals, for commanders, for men with guns. And while that message was spreading online, the USS George H.W. Bush was completing training exercises, ready to move if ordered. 2 carriers, 2 massive floating cities of power. And inside Iran, gunfire. Let's talk about the numbers. The crackdown began under direct orders. Live fire on protesters. Internal reports, before being suppressed, suggested at least 30,000 people killed in 48 hours. 30,000 in 48 hours. That's not crowd control, that's a battlefield. Even foreign intelligence agencies were stunned. US officials reportedly had to reassess their earlier claims that the protests could not destabilize the regime. Analysts were rewriting reports in real time as information trickled out. Think about that. When intelligence agencies are surprised, it means something unfolded beyond their worst projections. Meanwhile, phones were cut, the internet throttled, but eventually bits of truth leaked out, and the picture was ugly. Hospitals reportedly raided, wounded protesters shot, at least 50,000 arrested. And here's the part that changes everything. A soldier, just one, was sentenced to death for refusing to shoot civilians. One soldier who said no, executed. Now imagine every other soldier watching that. Do you think fear stops questions? No, it multiplies them. And that is where Reza Pahlavi's message lands like gasoline on fire. He didn't just criticize the regime, he offered the military an exit. He told them, don't sacrifice yourselves for a decaying system. Stand with the people, save your lives, play a historic role in the transition. That is not protest language. That is a transition language. That is how revolutions shift from street anger to power realignment. Now let's zoom out. At the same time this internal fracture is happening, the sea is filled with steel. The Pentagon signaled that a second carrier strike group could deploy within hours if ordered. President Trump publicly declared that another armada was on its way and warned that any escalation would bring major destruction. One side is pressuring from within, the other from outside. Whether coordinated or coincidental, the squeeze is real. And here's something people sometimes miss. Revolutions aren't just political, they're economical. Iran's currency recently hit an unprecedented collapse. Reports indicated it fell to around 1.5 million rials for $1. Since 2018, it has reportedly lost roughly 90% of its value. Imagine needing stacks of bills just to buy basic food. This isn't a theory, this is a kitchen table crisis. People are not protesting philosophy, they are protesting hunger. And no regime survives when it loses 3 things at once: money, legitimacy, military loyalty. Now let's talk about fear, because fear leaves fingerprints. During a rally marking the anniversary of the 1979 revolution, Iran's leadership spent time attacking Reza Pahlavi. Let that sink in. You don't use your big annual celebration to talk about someone who doesn't matter. You do that when you're worried, when you feel pressure, when you sense something slipping. And outside Iran, the diaspora mobilized. On a designated global day of action, protests erupted in more than 70 cities worldwide. Berlin, Toronto, Los Angeles, Paris, crowds gathered, old flags appeared, the lion and sun emblem from before 1979. This wasn't random anger. It looked organized, coordinated. That matters. Because diaspora communities fund media outlets. They run satellite channels. They break information blackouts. They shape narratives. And narratives win wars long before bullets do. Now here's where things get delicate. President Trump called Pahlavi a nice person, but said it wouldn't be appropriate to meet him. Public distance, private positioning, two carriers move forward, but no formal endorsement. That's strategy. You create conditions without owning the outcome. Meanwhile, reformist politicians inside Iran were reportedly arrested, even moderates who worked within the system. When a government starts arresting its own insiders, it means trust is gone. And when trust collapses, power becomes brittle. Even reports suggested military disobedience. Some warnings were allegedly published, then deleted. Deleted posts don't calm markets, they raise eyebrows. And every time information is erased, it travels faster. Now, let's slow this down. Is the regime collapsing tomorrow? Nobody knows. History rarely gives clean endings. But here's what we do know. Internal dissent, economic freefall, public anger, international pressure, naval power approaching, and a challenger speaking directly to soldiers. That combination is rare, very rare, and dangerous. This is not just about Iran. This affects Israel, the Gulf states, oil markets, global stability. Even countries far from the Middle East feel the shockwaves. When energy prices shift, economies in Africa feel it. When global tensions rise, China watches, Russia calculates, the US positions itself. The Middle East has a way of pulling the world into its storms. And right now, the clouds are thick. Is this the beginning of the end, or another chapter in a long struggle? That's what we're watching. And the next few days could decide whether this becomes a contained uprising or a regional earthquake. History gives us a pattern. Governments don't usually fall because of angry crowds alone. Crowds create pressure. They create headlines. They shake the palace walls. But regimes fall when the men with weapons hesitate. And right now, that hesitation is the quiet story underneath all the noise. If even a fraction of Iran's armed forces begin to refuse orders, if commanders start calculating their own survival, if units decide not to fire, that's when the structure weakens, because power at its core rests on enforcement, and enforcement depends on belief. Once belief cracks, loyalty becomes a transaction. Let me put it simply. If a soldier believes the regime will survive, he obeys. If he believes it will collapse, he protects himself. Reza Pahlavi understood that psychology perfectly. He didn't beg protesters. He didn't beg Western governments. He targeted the military. Don't sacrifice yourselves for a decaying regime. That's not emotional language. That's a strategic language. He's planting doubt, and doubt spreads faster than orders. Now, add to that the economic collapse. When a country's currency loses most of its value, soldiers' salaries become paper. Literally. Imagine serving a regime, risking your life, and your paycheck can barely buy groceries. That's when ideology meets reality. And reality usually wins. Meanwhile, from the outside, pressure continues to build. 2 American carrier groups in proximity is not symbolic. It's a message. A carrier strike group is not just a ship. It's a floating military ecosystem. Fighter jets, missile defense, surveillance, strike capability. It says, we are ready. But here's the twist. Washington hasn't formally declared regime change. Publicly, the message is cautious. Measured, privately, preparation speaks louder. President Trump has taken a familiar approach. Create leverage, build pressure, keep options open. He moves carriers, but avoids formal endorsement of any successor. That's strategic distance. It avoids ownership while increasing influence. Because let's be honest, if leadership changes in Tehran, whoever steps in will know exactly when the carriers moved. Now, let's talk about Israel. If conflict erupts, Israel becomes central immediately. There's no scenario where a US-Iran confrontation doesn't drag Israel into the equation. And Tehran knows that, which is why the military positioning is so sensitive. This isn't just Iran versus protesters. This is regional chess. Gulf states are watching carefully. Oil markets are reacting quietly. China is calculating. Russia is observing. Nobody wants chaos, but everybody wants an advantage. Now here's something uncomfortable. If the regime falls, What replaces it? That's the million-dollar question. Revolutions can remove power. They don't automatically build stability. Reza Pahlavi represents one vision, a return, symbolically at least, to pre-1979 identity, a nationalist, possibly constitutional framework. But Iran is not the Iran of the 1970s. It's younger, more connected, more fractured. There are reformists, hardliners, monarchists, secular activists, religious conservatives. Transitions are messy, very messy. Look at history. Whenever regimes collapse suddenly, power vacuums appear, and power vacuums attract chaos. That's why the military question matters so much. If a transition happens with military cooperation, it can be controlled. If it happens through fragmentation, it can spiral. And here's where the economic angle comes back in. Iran's financial crisis isn't just domestic. Sanctions, regional conflicts, oil export limitations, inflation. The economy has been bleeding slowly for years. Now it's hemorrhaging. And when people protest hunger, that's different from protesting politics. Hunger doesn't negotiate, it pushes. Now let me lighten this just slightly, because geopolitics can feel heavy. Imagine being a young Iranian soldier right now. You wake up, you see international headlines, you hear rumors inside the barracks, you know a fellow soldier was punished for refusing to fire, you know the currency is collapsing, you know foreign carriers are nearby, and then you open your phone if you can, and you see global rallies waving old national flags. That's psychological pressure from every direction. It's like being in a room where the walls are quietly moving inward. No one screams collapse at first. They whisper it. Now, let's address the possibility that the regime holds, because that's still very possible. Governments under pressure often respond with intensified force, mass arrests, information blackouts, internal purges. We've seen it before. Fear can temporarily restore control, but here's the difference now. Information flows faster than suppression. Deleted posts don't disappear anymore. They screenshot themselves. They replicate. Even when internet services are cut, satellite networks and diaspora channels keep narratives alive. This isn't the 1990s, and global optics matter. Now think about energy markets. Even the hint of instability in Iran moves oil prices. And when oil prices move, countries like Nigeria feel it, Ghana feels it, developing economies feel it. Fuel costs ripple into food prices, transport, electricity. The Middle East never stays in the Middle East, it travels. So this is not just a regional story, it's global. Now here's the scenario everyone fears. Internal uprising, external military pressure, regional escalation. That combination can ignite quickly, which is why diplomacy hasn't disappeared entirely. Negotiations still exist in the background. Quiet talks, back-channel conversations, because even the most hardened leaders understand something simple. War is unpredictable, and unpredictability is expensive. Now, let's talk about perception. The image of a leader forced into bunker-like security, the image of military dissent, the image of global protests. Those visuals shape reality as much as events do. Power is partly performance, and when performance falters, authority weakens. That's why speeches attacking opponents matter. That's why global rallies matter. That's why carrier deployments matter. It's psychological warfare layered over physical positioning. Now let me ask you something directly. Do you believe this moment feels like a turning point? Or does it feel like another storm that will pass? Because history sometimes surprises us. Sometimes regimes look strong, until they're not. Sometimes they look weak, and then consolidate power. We are watching something fragile, very fragile. A regime squeezed from inside and outside. An opposition emboldened. An international community cautious but alert. And ordinary citizens caught in the middle. Whatever unfolds next, it will not be small, and it will not be isolated. This could reshape alliances, shift oil flows, redraw influence maps, or it could settle into a tense stalemate. That's the uncertainty, and uncertainty is where history lives. Now I want to hear from you. Do you think this is the beginning of the end, or just another chapter in a long struggle? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's discuss it. If you found this analysis valuable, support the work. Like the video, subscribe to the channel to stay updated, because the next few days may write the next chapter of Middle East history.